Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, what a lovely backdrop you have there with a bookshelf, and the bookshelf is heart-shaped in the middle. That's precious.
Yes, reading is fundamental. So yeah, I'd heard that you'd read something, got really excited about books.
Right.
Yeah, books are good. Groundbreaking podcast right here. But I think he went a little deeper. I think there was something that, man, I don't know when the last time I've seen or heard anybody doing this, but reading aloud.
Reading aloud, yeah, and as always, your prompt and your background completely on topic. You just nail it every time, Marshall, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
Yes, this was back in September in the Wall Street Journal, a regular column they have. The columnist Megan Cox-Gurdon, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She said, "Reading aloud can remedy COVID learning loss." So there was some research done, which did not surprise my fellow homeschooling and classical education compatriots, that a lot of the learning loss with COVID could be basically erased if the teacher was using novels, even novels at a higher level than the student themselves, and reading them quickly for the enjoyment of reading instead of reading them slowly and didactically, making it just every little point and stopping along the way. Just reading aloud. There was something that happened there. It improved math skills, let alone language skills, and went on to basically help the kids that were even further behind come up faster. So we'll link to the article for those of you that want to go read the column. But it reminded me of something that my wife's a big fan of. This is Sarah McKenzie's second book, The Read Aloud Family. She also has a book called Teaching from Rest. And she has a podcast, The Read Aloud Revival. She follows the teachings of a Victorian educator named Charlotte Mason, who's become very gone through a renaissance here lately, and is really well regarded. And the whole point was narration. I'm going to read something to you. We're going to talk about something. I want you to narrate back what you think you heard, student. And so a lot of homeschool families are doing this. And it just dawned on me as I was reading this Wall Street Journal column that this actually works in a lot of different ways for a lot of different folks. And I just thought I'd throw out some ideas for the managers out there who have managers meetings, departmental meetings, and have opportunities where they could be telling stories. There's not a book necessarily that we're going to read aloud. It's not like we're going to necessarily sit down and I'm going to read you a fairy tale at work, but there are stories that we can be telling each other, and the benefits of making that an oral thing and saying some things out loud might be just the ticket for where we happen to be in modern society. So I've just got some random thoughts on that I wanted to share with our audience, both of them.
Well, and I think both of them are intrigued at this point. And yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking the whole world has moved to short form video. Everybody's watching videos, both our listeners included. And so nobody's reading at this point. And so, you introduce this idea that, I could get in front of my team, read a story or passage from a book, with setting it up ahead of time, letting them know that we're going to discuss this. So I actually need you to pay attention. Like that. Pay attention, and then we're gonna, and maybe even offer them a few questions ahead of time. When we're done, we'll talk about what were the characters thinking, or that type of thing. So and then ultimately, what's the big takeaway from this story? What did you take away from this story?
That's a pretty accurate assessment. Now, one thing that I might add to that is that the story might be a story from work, right? It might be an anecdote of something that happened here 10 years ago that really illustrate one of the values of our company. Or it might be, Johnny had a great sales day yesterday. Johnny, come on up and let us talk through, what you did. Tell us, narrate for us what you did, and let's talk about what we think we heard you say. And all of it's based on that very idea of, it is the TikTok time, right? We don't have attention span anymore. And so the narration is a way to keep that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me bring you back, Mike.
No. It just dawned on me. I may have done this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do this thing where I get like all the salespeople together.
Yep.
And I read them a review. So here's a customer review. The customer writes this wonderful story. I read the review and I go, all right, so what were the key things that impressed the customer? What were the key things that was done, by the organization, by this individual in the organization, that were notable enough that the customer made note of it? What was the customer feeling? What do you believe they were feeling if it wasn't, expressed in the story itself? And then, all right, so what do we need to do to make these type of reviews happen more frequently?
And notice what you're doing there is you're setting them up to pay attention, obviously, and we all need frankly some help in this day and age with being able to focus and pay attention. Attention is stretching towards something. That's literally what it means. And so we're stretching people when we're going through the exercise of having them listen to something like this. But the other side of that coin is you're really causing them to step into the shoes of the people in the story, right? So get into that customer's shoes. Now we've got empathy happening. Well, empathy is a huge skill for the workforce in our day and age. If you're in a service industry, especially, we really need you to be able to see it from the side of the people that you're serving, and see it from the side of maybe colleagues that you're serving that are internal customers of your department or your role or what have you. So already we have two really key things happening where we're growing attention span and we're growing empathy, and we haven't even got to the learning yet of what we're hoping that our people get out of the actual training event. So I think you're spot on.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah. Once again, I've accidentally stumbled upon something.
So it doesn't take a genius, you might say.
Yeah. I'm perfectly qualified for this.
Yes, you are.
But it's nice to know there's research, there's entire books, homeschooling curriculums built around this idea.
This Sarah McKenzie lady, my wife's a big fan, and one of the things I heard said about her at a conference once, it was a bunch of PhDs in the front of the room, and they said, we'd been theorizing about what it would look like to, bring classical education back and how would you do it and so on and so forth. Well, I don't know Sarah's whole story, but Sarah McKenzie basically was a homeschool mom saying, I think this is what my kids need, and started doing it. So she just sort of practically stumbled into, this whole thing and was basically the proof point that the PhDs had been looking for all along. Just some homeschool mom out there, just some homemaker. And it goes for the flip side too. Kids at all sorts of different levels are benefiting. All of the boats are lifting as the water goes up from one storytelling event. So as an example, in our home, we've got soon to have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. Well, we're still narrating the same books to all of them. So the 6-year-old's hearing what the 12-year-old is hearing. It might be a little bit elevated speech for the 6-year-old, but guess what? You'd be shocked by how much they pick up. They're just like sponges. Their vocabulary becomes elevated, right? They're paying attention. They do get a general sense of what's going on. Isn't that also true in our workplace, though? Don't we have people at all different skill levels, education levels, development levels? And as we share these stories, well, there's really two benefits there. If you share the stories in a group, it's a group moment, right? It's a group bonding moment, and you need those for your team, especially if it's a win about your team, like you mentioned. But the other thing is that everybody in the room is going to benefit from that. Everybody gets a chance to raise their level. You can be at the top of the sales board, you could be at the bottom of the sales board, and there's something in that story that helps you take it to the next level.
Well, and as you're talking, I'm thinking of Laura Ingalls, and
Yep.
you've got the one room schoolhouse,
Yep.
and I always wondered that. You had all the grades in one room at the
Yep.
schoolhouse, and you had one teacher.
Yep.
Like, how in the world did they ever do that?
Yep.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking, all right, maybe this is how they did it.
Yeah, I mean that was what we call classical education today. By about 1900 and back, we called it education. This is just how it was done. We just put people into a room and helped them learn. Families too.
So,
So it works in the workplace too.
so everything that we call classical now in the olden days was just the thing.
Just the thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. Just that's very insightful. It wasn't a classic when they made it. It was only a classic 100 years later. Oh,
That's right.
okay. All right.
That's right.
I'm with you now.
Same
So
with
the
classical music.
so the other benefit I see here is that you might actually rekindle an interest. This is such a good pun. Rekindle an interest in reading. Just stop me now. I can't help myself. So yeah, you read an excerpt from something, and I'm sitting out there and I'm going, that's fascinating. I wonder how the rest of the chapter goes or the rest of the book goes. And now I've got people leaning in to books.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with books on tape, audiobooks. If you wanted to go that route, and I certainly do on quite a bit of stuff. There's the apps from your library, like Hoopla is the one that I really like. We'll link to that too. Tons of modern books and ancient books on Hoopla, free. As long as you have a library card at a library that supports it. And there's probably 3 other apps out there that are very similar. But I bring that up because hey, maybe reading ain't your thing. And that's okay. But guess what? We're all listening. We're in an oral culture at this point. I know it's a video culture, but it's really an oral culture in a lot of ways.
Well, the fact that the majority of both our listeners don't watch the YouTube as much as they download the podcast.
Yeah.
So they're taking the audio version of this versus the video version of this.
Yeah, that was shocking to both of us, I think, when we noticed that happening. It might also have something to do with our, substandard looks. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, we definitely have more oral listeners than we have visual listeners. Viewers.
That is so true. So true. So we've talked about any other benefits of doing this that we haven't talked about?
Yeah. There's one other. You mentioned rekindling an interest in learning, but really this is inspirational all the way through. Hopefully your people are getting inspired by that hook of the story and wanting to come back and hear what happens. As the story unfolds. Maybe you have a story that you stretch out over several meetings, perhaps, right? As you go through different stages with a customer or something like that. Who knows where this could go? But the idea that you're inspiring them along the way with some things that they could personally be doing. Meanwhile, it really is inspirational for you as the leader. The column talks about joy. That the teachers who are going through these research opportunities with students doing the read alouds really felt like they were more often than not describing these teaching moments as joy. And talk about something that teachers often don't get to experience in our day and age. It's such a grind that you hear teachers talk about. Same with managers, right? The managers can get beat down and stressed out by the grind. And yet here's a moment where the team comes together and they're learning and they're paying attention. And there's focus on something really cool. And that's what I think our managers can really get out of this is that this will be fun. This will be joy. So thanks to Megan Cox Gurdon. She also wrote, I believe it's called The Enchanted Hour, talking about reading aloud. We'll link to all these books and to Hoopla, the app, for folks that want to pursue this further. And of course, we'd love for them to talk to you and I about how you do this practically in the workplace. We enjoy doing stuff like this. You and I both have made use of techniques that we're talking about here. Like you said, nothing new under the sun, and these are just very time-tested ideas that I think could stand to be used a little more in this day and age.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And it could be as simple as taking the thank you note from a customer
Yeah,
and reading it to the team,
absolutely.
and then leading a discussion after that.
That's right.
What was this customer feeling? What was the most important thing we did for this customer? What
Yeah.
was it that rose to the level that they wrote a note?
And I think the other easy way to do it would be to interview one of your staff about something that happened that was significant. You maybe are putting them on the spot a little bit. Maybe don't give them too much of a warning and just make it as informal as possible. Sort of prep them that you want to talk about that a little bit so they've got some thoughts, but just make it very informal. And I think as they get used to the concept, that sort of open air interview becomes a really powerful way to do storytelling for your staff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What a wonderful way to reinforce the culture that you're working to build.
That's right. That's it.
So yeah, in this episode, I think the big takeaway was read aloud to people and then talk about it.
That's it. That's it.
I can do this. This is good stuff.
Right.
I am with you 100% of the way. Nice.
Beautiful.
All right, let's let everybody get to their favorite reading. So yeah, click pause and start reading. And in the meantime, we'll queue up our favorite narrator, Mr. John Wolf.
Amen.
And that's a wrap. It doesn't take a genius. The blog dedicated to reducing the irreducible. Next time, prime numbers. What makes them so special? Join us then, and thanks for listening.
That's good enough.